The S&P 500 fell 2.7%. NASDAQ lost 4%. Bank stocks slid along with shares of smaller companies perceived to be sensitive to the economy. Bonds rallied. That's what
you voted for this, Ben Shapiro. You and your fans voted for this. We have multiple right-wing MAGA hosts finally calling Trump out for his economic bullshit that is currently tanking the stock market, hurting everybody's 401k, and hurting multiple indicators regarding the U.S. economy. And you know, I always find it interesting how Trump clearly consumes a steady diet of Fox News. When he's tweeting out, you can tell he's always watching Fox or some sort of news. He's addicted to it, right? But the thing is, whenever something goes wrong, whether it's the economy or whether it's COVID, you see Fox News hosts try to apply pressure on Trump in very unique ways. They know that Trump is watching, so it's not like they're openly pleading to Trump, but they try to say, hey, this is not making voters happy. They try to put a little bit of pressure to see if Trump's mind can be swayed, and that seems to be what's going on with the economy, because Peter Doocy this morning began saying that everyone's retirement account is hurting, there is not a lot of predictability within the economy, and that Trump basically needs to get his shit together. Peter Doocy doesn't say exactly that, but I'll play the clip if you just drop a like, drop some blue hearts, and let's start off with something a little bit more fun. I clicked on Ben Shapiro's show today. Sometimes I watch it, not because I like to torture myself, but because I like to hear the current right-wing talking points. I find it entertaining to hear what right-wingers are talking about. And this one caught my eye because it was titled, "Stock Market Plunges. So What's Next?" It seems like a rather defeated title. Like how do they fix this crisis that they've caused is the sort of vibe that it gives me. So I clicked on it, and the entire thing is him basically pleading with Trump to stop being so unpredictable, and he's trying to run defense. He's trying to downplay Trump's terrible economic actions by promising that there is some grander vision. He's like, oh, you know, Trump is very cryptic. He's always working towards some grand goal. We can't quite figure out what it is yet. Ben Shapiro literally says, I can't quite figure out what his goal is, but I'm sure there's something there. It's hilarious copium. And let's watch it together.
when it comes to the economy, which is the thing that most people vote based upon, make their political decisions based upon. If President Trump is blamed for an economic downturn, the effects of that could be disastrous, not just obviously for the Trump administration, but for many of the things that are important for the United States, including free markets more generally.
And for the citizens, what about the voters? And for the voters?
According to the Wall Street Journal, worries about a trade war, signs of flagging growth, splinters in the artificial intelligence trade have taken some of the shine off prior optimism. President Trump over the weekend refused to rule out a recession this year. The S&P 500 fell 2.7%. NASDAQ lost 4%. Bank stocks slid along with shares of smaller companies perceived to be sensitive to the economy. Bonds rallied. That's what
you voted for this, Ben Shapiro. You and your fans voted for this.
Where money tends to go when people are uncertain what to do. They start buying bonds because at least they feel like they're going to get paid off at a certain point. While the U.S.'s strength is in question, other countries are ramping up efforts to revive their own economies. China is unleashing more stimulus to meet its economic growth target. Germany has announced a spending splurge on its military and infrastructure.
I like how Ben Shapiro is just calmly reading about the U.S. kind of falling behind on the global stage as China and Russia eat our lunch. And look at his face. He's like, really? I have to sit here and defend this?
Now, again, all of that is fake, meaning that if you just borrow to spend, which is what the United States has been doing for a very long time, you end up with an artificially inflated economy. This has happened in the United States. It's way more true for Germany and China, actually, than it is of the United States. However, there is something else happening, and it's deeper, and that is a widespread perception that the Trump team is trying to reshape the global order in a way that will not be good for the American economy or the global economy.
Yeah, he's been withdrawing the U.S.
This is a widespread perception that is beginning to sort of percolate into the markets. And again, I'm talking to many of the market makers. I'm talking to business people who have literally hundreds of millions of dollars invested in the markets. And they are all very, very wary of the sort of signals that are being put out. And signals matter an awful lot when it comes to the economy.
Yeah, this dude openly ran on being unpredictable and on tariffing countries for zero reason. We knew that he didn't know what a tariff was, and you guys still voted for him. I mean, yesterday the stock market got shredded, and I thought, okay, no way it drops more today. But I woke up, and what do you know? It drops more and more today. It's almost impressive at this point.
These days, because as I've spoken about before, If you're even a small business person, what do you want to make sure that you're going to invest in your business? You want a growing economy. You want to make sure that the government isn't going to come and take your money. The government isn't going to come in and overregulate you. And that the conditions tomorrow are going to be very similar to the conditions you have today. That's how you make predictive decision making. It's how you decide whether to hire that extra employee. It's how you decide whether to invest in more capital equipment. It's how you decide whether to expand your holdings in particular areas or contract your holdings in particular areas.
You need fixed expenses. You need an allocation of resources that are fixed.
Predictability matters. Now, President Trump is not a predictable president. He has never been a predictable president, but the one area that he was always quite predictable on was his economics. President Trump liked tariffs, but you know what
he would predictably give tax cuts to the rich, sure.
He liked more. He liked results. And so what that meant is that during the first administration, when he talked tariffs a lot, the total amount of tariffs effectually that were put on the American economy ended up totaling something like $30 billion total. It was not huge. And much of it was designed to leverage places like Mexico into signing a new version of the USMCA. I think one of the reasons that people in the markets are particularly perturbed by Trump's attacks on Canada in the markets is that it's one thing to say we're going after Mexico to get them to close the border. That's a piece of leverage. All right, fine. It's another thing to say, okay, we're going to put tariffs on China because China is stealing our intellectual property and building up their military at incredibly rapid rates. Totally agree. Fine. Canada? What did Canada do?
Exactly. Okay, now Ben Shapiro, now that his money is on the line and now that the stock market is crashing, he's starting to wake up a little bit. He's starting to wake up like he got smacked across the face and he's like, okay, wait a minute. Wait, why are we tariffing Canada again? Let me rewind that.
Totally agree. Fine. Canada? What did Canada do? Exactly. And the very notion that Canada is not a major trading partner with the United States is untrue. Canada is our number one trading partner.
Okay, so he's calling Trump out on his BS. Sorry to subject you guys to Ben Shapiro, but some of this is important.
Canada, again, has extraordinarily low average tariff rates with the United States under a deal negotiated during President Trump's first term, the USMCA. So the aim at Canada appears to the global markets to be a move away from America's involvement in the world in total.
It doesn't just appear to be. That is what Trump has been doing. He's been moving away from a lot of our democratic alliances.
As I've spoken about before, that doesn't mean we need to be involved everywhere, either militarily or economically. However, the reality that America is the global hegemon is one of the reasons that the American economy continues to be the behemoth that it is.
I've been saying this on my show. It is a mutually beneficial relationship. Let's check out what Fox News is saying before I allow Ben Shapiro to keep yapping to you guys. Peter Doocy said this today.
And we also expect the White House to try to reassure folks who are sitting there looking at their 401ks going down and down and down. This is a White House that came in trying to get federal workers to retire by the hundreds of thousands, but it's tough to make the argument that you should retire if your retirement accounts are getting throttled, which is what is happening right now.
Oof, Peter Doocy with a left hook right towards the Trump administration saying, how are you supposed to have federal workers retire when the retirement accounts are getting throttled? It's the same thing as when Trump tweeted out in the middle of the night that we need to buy more Teslas. He actually tweeted that. The president of the United States is leveraging the Oval Office to say that people need to buy more of his buddy's product. But it's like, how are we supposed to buy Teslas? Number one, in this economy, everything is so expensive. I just had eggs this morning, super expensive. Number two, when everyone's 401k and stock market is getting throttled entirely. But number three, when you're firing people en masse, you want federal employees who have terrible 401ks and you just got fired to buy a Tesla? I don't know what this dude expects. Now let's go back to this Fox News segment from yesterday.
And if you have different people in the administration giving different messages, I mean, the Commerce Secretary and the President are having different messages on the same day. That's not giving the market any sort of ease or certainty for investors. So I wouldn't be surprised if we have an even greater crash.
We should let Jonathan keep talking because the market's come back 50 points.
There you go. There you go.
But obviously, the Dow is 1,500 points below where it was.
Fox News just trying to put out the fire. I mean, look at the Chiron. Dow tumbles 900 plus points as recession fears loom. Dow plunges on fears trade war will hurt growth, so they are blaming it directly on Trump in that Chiron. Dow plunges on fears trade war will hurt growth. Dow slides as stock market volatility continues. And let's listen to Ben Shapiro. You guys hear the little bit of cope in his voice, right? I mean, he's doing a decent job of hiding it and acting like he's being the rational voice. But this dude knows that he voted for an unpredictable orange fuck who is now tanking the stock market, and he's kind of facing the consequences.
When you withdraw from what is a de facto financial empire, when you withdraw from providing global security and freedom of the seas, when it appears that what you're attempting to do is draw inward, the rest of the world has less interest in investing in you, buying your debt, for example, funding your giant government expenditures. The rest of the world is less interested in doing business with you if it's harder to do business with you. And this has a very, very bad effect on the economy, not just outside the United States, but inside the United States. It turns out that autarky, the notion that we should produce and consume everything in the United States, that's a romantic idea. Everywhere it has been tried, literally everywhere it has been tried over the course of the last 2 centuries, it has ended with impoverishment of the population, followed generally by expansionism.
Okay, now Ben Shapiro is talking about Trump's economic theories like he talks about socialism. When Ben Shapiro brings up socialism, he'll say, this is something that's been tried and failed so many times. Why would we ever try that? And it's a valid argument. He's doing the same thing when he's talking about Trump's economic theory of producing everything in the United States.
That is true in Germany. It is true in China. It is true pretty much it is true in Russia. It's true pretty much everywhere it's been tried. And so if the markets think that's what you're doing, even if you're not doing it, that's not going to be good for the markets.
Yeah.
Hey, as Reuters is reporting, President Trump's tariffs have spooked investors with fears of an economic downturn, driving a stock market sell-off that has wiped out $4 trillion from the S&P 500's peak last month when Wall Street was cheering much of the Trump agenda. A barrage of new Trump policies increased uncertainty for businesses, consumers, and investors, notably back and forth tariff moves against major trading partners like Canada, Mexico, and China.
Yeah, no shit, that doesn't do our economy any favors.
Now, President Trump, for his part, he's saying, listen, short-term pain for long-term gain. Here's what President Trump had to say with Maria Bartiromo.
You said, look, we're going to have a disruption, but we're okay with that. Is that what you meant? The stock market going down was the disruption? What other disruption were you alluding to?
Look, what I have to do is build a strong country. You can't really watch the stock market. If you look at China, they have a 100-year perspective. We have a quarter. We go by quarters.
That's true.
And you can't go by that. You have to do what's right. What we're doing is we're building a tremendous foundation for the future. Tremendous foundation.
Okay, you need to explain, if that's the case, what is the tremendous foundation that is going to lead to future growth, and how do we get from point A to point B in a way that doesn't blow up everybody's 401k?
Yeah.
It turns out, by the way, more than half of Americans are heavily invested in the stock market through things like their 401k. So this is not just a quote-unquote rich people problem. This is an everybody problem. And the sort of side effects of market downturns affect everyone from Main Street to Wall Street. As the Wall Street Journal points out, there's some red lights that are already flashing. Take Friday's jobs report, which showed employers added 151,000 jobs last month. That's half as many as in November and December. Leisure and hospitality jobs have been declining in the past 2 months, which may indicate...
As Ben Shapiro said, if you're going to say you're building towards something, you're building towards this great vision of an empire, you have to describe exactly what you're doing. And Trump isn't doing that. It's actually kind of interesting to see Ben Shapiro. I wouldn't even say he's ripping into Trump, but he's giving very fair criticism. Like, dude, you're crashing everyone's 401ks and you're not really giving us clear explanations as to why.
Okay, consumers are pulling back on their discretionary spending. The labor force participation rate fell 0.2 percentage points to 2.4%, owing to a decline among men. Manufacturing did gain 10,000 jobs in the month, but the number of workers employed part-time who wanted but couldn't get full-time work increased by 460,000 to 4.9 million, which is the most in spring of 2021. Service businesses are being whipsawed. Transportation equipment manufacturers are being whipsawed. Whipsaw just means one day they think that there's going to be a tariff, one day they don't know that there's going to be a tariff. And so
yeah, it's not good. Businesses can't really work or thrive in an unpredictable economic environment.
Everybody's looking for what's the overall vision here. What is the overall vision? Is this President Trump using tariffs as leverage? We don't know. Is this President Trump using tariffs as a way to force everybody else to lower their tariffs? We don't know. We've heard that justification too. Or is it just that President Trump sees a vision of the United States with higher tariffs and a reshoring of manufacturing that is good for particular industries, but very bad for the American consumer by raising prices overall and also disconnecting the American economy from other parts of the globe that actually, by the way, again, do subsidize the American economy? I understand that there is this notion that trade deficits, where we buy more stuff from people than they buy from us, somehow reflects American weakness. But the reality is,
he is just directly fact-checking Trump at this point. When he's talking about trade deficits and this perception of trade deficits making us weak, he is speaking directly to Trump. Like, hey man, trade deficits do not make us weak. It's basically a plea. He's saying, stop crashing my 401k with your reckless economic policy, and I'll leave it at that. Sorry for playing so much Ben Shapiro, but I do find it fascinating when right-wingers begin to sort of turn on their daddy President King and say, dude, your policy is reckless and makes zero sense whatsoever. We'll leave it at that. If you appreciate these videos, drop a like, subscribe, have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.